you know, a lot of people are asking, what is open source, right? And so how do you get involved and why should you get involved? And open source is a production method of software. It came out of historically from the wish to be able to work together on fixing software. So when something was broken, you know, because software was easily distributable, a lot of people were using it, and suddenly something broke and people didn't want to wait until very few people could fix it. They wanted to have actually something that they can fix themselves. That was really the idea of open source software. So you could actually fix it yourself. And it's not very different than having a car, you know, and being able to work on the car yourself and not having to wait until somebody, possibly very expensively, repair it for you. And so then the question is, how did these open source efforts evolved? And they evolved very much like volunteer activity. So if you volunteer for something to help your community, you get involved and you don't actually expect any pay for it, but you might actually pick up some skills. And so just like in volunteer activity, it can be very fulfilling, even though you don't get paid. But in open source software, the interesting thing is that the community work actually became in many cases superior to what the industry could do. Even though, you know, there were volunteers, there were also industry people involved in these open source projects, but it was fundamentally something that the community excelled at, and that these community projects actually ended up moving much faster than the industry could perform. So a good example is Linux operating system, right? That in the last decades moved much faster forward, that it became actually the dominant operating system today than any of the commercial products. All the commercial Unix flavors that came from various companies proved to have been no match against the community work, the worldwide community work in that area. So community work is, it turns out, in many cases superior to commercial and proprietary software development, and moves much faster. And it's also in many ways more fun. And it's also a way to make sure that the work that you're doing in a particular project doesn't just disappear. That was actually the motivation for many famous open source developers. When they worked in startups and in various companies, the open source, the software that they created, when the company didn't succeed, which often happens, then that code disappears. There are no rights. There are, you know, it has to literally be thrown away and destroyed. And so they were sick of seeing all that code that they wrote just disappear, right? And so the nice thing is, if you're an open source software developer, every code you write, every success that you had stays there and is visible. And so that's a job security, right? If you're an open source, you can actually change companies, you can change affiliations, but the work always stays with you. It's not owned by a company, but it's owned by the community that owns that collectively owns the result of your software development. And so there's a number of open source licenses, legal underpinnings that make this work. Obviously, we don't have time today to get into that. But what actually transpired is that the industry really realized that there's a huge amount of value in organizations that know how to interact with open source ecosystems, which are collections of projects that interact with each other. And And that's the best example is maybe that that Red Hat, that probably everybody knows, sold to IBM a couple of years ago for $34 billion. And that's, that's a price tag. $34 billion is a lot of money. And that sort of put open source really on the map. It shows the value. And so industry created new institutions. One of them is the Open Source Program Office. And we are actually now in the process in UC Santa Cruz. We get funding from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to create an open source program office here in UC Santa Cruz. And this program, this open source research experience, is one of those programs that are being is going to be managed by this open source program office in the OSPO. And one of the things that we want to actually want to accomplish with this open source research experience is we want to bring in students and connect them with researchers and with sponsors. And this can be sponsors from industry or from foundations or from nonprofits, from institutes, research labs. There's many people who can get involved and sponsor summer internships. And this is all revolving around the summer internship idea. So, so I think, I hope I made the case to you that this open source is something that is really important. And now the question is, how should you get involved, right? And the best way is to find a good open source project and find a good mentor. And so within universities, there are lots of research projects that have open source components. And we are actually, as part of the open source research experience, are creating an exchange. This is like not unlike a stock exchange or some other kind of exchange, but it's an exchange of project ideas that you can connect with, and you can basically get involved, contact mentors of project ideas that you find interesting, and that you can, that you can start a relationship with the mentor, and start working with the mentor, and sort of get a feel of whether this is a good relationship, whether there's a good match, whether the project is the right project. There's many other projects you could do instead, right? So you can sort of find a good place among all the mentors, and then and basically once you found a good mentor, you can then, if everything works out, work on an application, to actually a formal application to work on this project for the summer. And then if that application gets accepted, you get actually paid for working with the mentor for the summer on this project. And this is a fantastic way for you to learn how to be involved in an open source project, how to get your experience, how to build out your network, not only with the mentor, but also everyone who is connected to the open source project. And it's basically a way to really build your professional network. And not only within academia, but also with other people who are in connected open source projects. And these open source project communities have lots of experts in industry, and you can, through these communities, they're an excellent way to build relationships to people in industry and other organizations. and maybe find a good job. So why should you start thinking about to get involved now? So we're doing this every year, and there is a timeline. So let me first, before I go to the timeline, just give you one picture about how this looks in, how this looks in our minds. So this is a picture of the stakeholders in this process, right? And so you are the students. You can spend your summer writing code for exciting open source projects. These are getting mentored by scientists that are doing cutting edge research and using open source to amplify the impact of their research and to actually get, a lot of the stuff done that they need to get done. And the sponsors that were getting involved in this process are funding both scientists and students, and they're interested. And these have, again, could be industry, could be also from foundations like the Linux Foundation. They're interested in the new technologies that you are helping to create, but they're also interested in you. They're interested in a new talent. They're interested in finding people who might who might jump into bigger roles after that summer internship. And of course, the scientists are very interested in you because you might decide that you would really like to work in that research project, and it might be something that you consider for graduate school, for instance. And then you have somebody you can refer to when applying to that graduate school, and that's usually, I can tell you as a professor, it's a huge advantage if you have already worked with someone at the graduate school that you're applying for, and they can basically vouch for you. And it's like, yep, I love working with this person, and I really like to have that person accepted to the graduate school. That counts a lot. So the other thing, so why now? There is a timeline, and let me just find the timeline. Actually, I had that already set up here. Hold on, let me just go back. So this is the timeline, and maybe Stephanie, can you kind of walk us through this timeline? And,
sounds great. I also want to just tell everyone that if you have questions while we're talking, feel free to throw them in the chat, because one of us can answer while the other one's talking. First off, hi, I'm Stephanie. I am the assistant director here at Cross. I work with Carlos on, particularly this is one of my favorite programs, the OSRE program. So definitely, if you have questions or anything after this session, feel free to email me. You should all have my email by now. And if not, just let me know. But you can always do the crossinfo at ucsc.edu as well. Like what Carlos was saying, we are working. The timeline we have up here is still there's still a few things that might change on it, but this is getting closer to final. And you'll see that we've already started the program kind of early this year. We're on last already in November, and we have a number of the mentors. When Carlos was talking about the scientists, here I refer to those folks as mentors. And anybody who's worked or knows about the Google Summer of Code or any of those type of programs will recognize kind of that terminology and what a mentor does. So we started talking with our mentors, who are basically UC affiliated, as Carlos mentioned, UC affiliated researchers back in November, and they've already been putting up project ideas on our project ideas page, which I hope everyone's had a chance to look at. And I'll post that link in a second if you haven't. And right now we're also reaching out to sponsors. Carlos mentioned the industry sponsors and foundation sponsors. This also includes fellowships and Google Summer of Code activities as well. We expect to have a kind of clear idea of where our sponsorships are coming from by late February, which is a deadline we have for our outside sponsors. And then once we have that idea, that's when I really see an uptick in students reaching out to the mentors. I don't want to say that that's when you need to wait until March to do that. I know a number of folks have already been reaching out to mentors by getting their contact details on the project ideas page. That is totally fine. Your mentors will talk to you, will interact with you. We've asked our mentors to respond in a timely manner, and they're definitely really happy to talk to you about the programs already, the projects already. And that ideas page is similar. Anybody who's, like I said, worked on GSOC or any program like that, it's a very similar setup to that. Actually, we mirror. I mean, we've used that that format as a basis for our project ideas page. So you can feel free to reach out to the mentors if you have any problems or questions about who to reach out to. If it's not clear, you can always email me. And I think it's really important we state this in the information that's on the website, and I want to reiterate that reaching out to the mentors is super important. Talking to them, and from now until the application deadline there on April 19th, working with them and interacting with them is a super important way of assuring success, both in the application process as well as in the ultimate project. So I definitely want to reiterate and that don't feel shy. Mentors are really happy to talk to you about your application and help you with. You have to write the proposal, but they will give you comments. They will help you through the process before the application deadline. So in May we'll start looking at how many slots we're getting based on the various sponsorships we've gotten, and that's when we let the mentors know the number we have, and then it's between us and the mentors. We'll talk about the priorities with regards to the mentors, where they see the best fits, and then we'll announce the selections on the 20th. We're somewhat flexible in our project. The duration, it should typically go between June and August, but we do allow for some flexibility in start and end, because we know everyone has a little bit different school schedule, academic schedule. We were also this year allowing, and I can talk a little bit more about, people have questions, allowing part-time projects. Similar, GSOC is also doing that this year, so we're kind of following their lead on that. So there will be projects that we'll have listed, and we haven't finalized those projects yet within the project ideas page, but we'll have projects that will be a certain number, like a full-time idea, like a 30 to 40 hour a week for the entire duration, or ones that we see as like 15 to 20 hours. And so keep that in mind if there's something that helps you be able to participate still. So keep that in mind, and we'll try and make sure that that's clear over the next month or so as our project ideas page gets more finalized. There are, and just to say that there are actually mentors still adding to that, and we'll add probably up until late February. Hopefully more sooner rather than later, but that we're allowing up to that point. We'd like to wrap up in mid-September. Again, there is some flexibility, and we have had people have to extend for, especially if there's in these days of pandemic and other things going on, we have definitely have flexibility if for some reason someone needs to extend. So that's something we can all work through. The exciting part is that also then though at the beginning of October we have our open source research symposium, which is a large activity that we do every year to highlight open source work here at UCSC, and this year we'll be doing it as a UC wide event. And part of that, and we have at least 2 people on the call who did this last year. You get to we will create it in even if we're doing it in person this year, we will create a virtual platform for those who cannot join us in person. And you get to do either a lightning talk or talk as part of one of our technical workshop. And you can present to the wider audience the work that you did over the summer. That's pretty much the setup. And what we like to see in that last, and I didn't really add the details, the wrap up and final projects it will really depend on what your mentor and you want. I love to see blog postings from our students. I love to see reports that I can point to on the website, but a lot of it's really based on what your project is and how your project, how your mentor and you kind of envision your project wrapping up and what they see as the final project. Let me think. Carlos, do you want? I want to talk about a little bit about the application process as well and some of the eligibility criteria. I noticed there's a question about that right now, or do you want me to? Did you want to go into any other details first?
I think this is great. I think the questions are also about eligibility for non-students, US universities, right? This comes up all the time.
Yeah. So that's a great question. Thanks, Gigi, who also answered this part of this question. I think the short answer to that is we have funded and worked with students from all over the world, and typically are able to, any non-US student is able to participate, and we are able to give them a stipend. A lot of times how we work that out is dependent upon where you're based. For those based in the US, we have a little bit easier process for it. For those of you based outside of the US, it kind of depends on which sponsor is paying and how, and so certain processes change based on the sponsor, but we've never not been able to have a student participate because of them being a non-US. So generally speaking, you are eligible as long as you're an undergraduate or recent graduate from the undergraduate university. When we have had also done some master's students. So that's a little bit of an exception, but we will, depending on what the discussion between the mentor and the students and us, we will allow that as an exception from a case to case basis. So generally speaking, everyone on the call is likely to be eligible. The only one, and I don't put this up because I don't want to have to, I'd like to talk about this with folks and to make sure everybody understands it. The reason we don't kind of say that a little more generally on the website is in the US, there are what we call embargoed countries that we are not allowed to have students from. And they're a very limited number. And from what I've seen, the people registering, none of you are from those countries. So it's likely not a problem. And it's only students who are living in those countries. So if you were, say, an Iranian student living in Canada, because you're based in Canada, you are now you would actually be eligible based on your residency, not on your citizenship. So like I said, one of the embargoed countries is Iran, North Korea, and I was like, used to know this a lot better. So, and there's a few others that are not eligible. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to email me. If you are worried that you might be from one of the embargoed countries, most people who are from those embargoed countries know that, and those would be ones we're not legally able to work with. But every other country in the world, which is like, every other country in the world, we typically have methods for allowing for stipends to be put. And that's, for me, the main issue is that when we accept you as a student, we also are agreeing that we're giving you a stipend, that this is like just like a GSOC or other fellowship programs, there is a stipend. This is not a volunteer unpaid activity. You are this, and we typically base our stipends on what GSOC has determined. So I use the GSOC stipend, their calculations for stipends, which I think is based on where you live. So just so that you know, and that's an easy one. If you want to understand how much the stipend will be, I suggest when you'll see it, you can look at last year's and it'll probably be pretty similar. So look at GSOC's stipend list from last year, and I can add that. I don't have it on handy, but I can add that to the chat. And I think it'll be similar this year. All right. Okay, so any other questions with regards to eligibility or stipends, since that's actually a kind of important issue? And feel free just to jump out. You don't have to do it in the chat. I mean, just unmute yourself and ask. All right. If there's no questions on that, I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the application process as well, if that's if just to make sure everyone has a clear understanding. Right now, basically, it's similar to a lot of the, like I said, the GSOC program where you work with your mentors. We have on the website a template that I typically just request people to use, simple just to keep everything consistent. But we do understand that if you need to adjust, it's it's fine. It doesn't have to. As long as all the important information is in there and your mentor agrees that this is the information that needs to be in there, that's acceptable. The other aspect about it is a lot of times people ask me about page number, how long does it have to be? I have seen successful applications from anywhere from 3 pages to 10 pages. I mean, you basically really depends on what you and your mentor have agreed to with regards to what needs to be in there to show that you can have a successful project. I'm assuming, I guess a good question I want to add, and people can use just a little raise hand button. How many folks have actually done applications through GSOC, for instance? I just want to at least one person. There are a couple others. And Colleen has, and she's a mentor. So it's good. I'm glad to know that that some of our I was gonna say some of our mentors have also been. This is actually interesting. Colleen brings this up. A couple of our mentors have also been on GSOC contributors as well. So this is there's a lot of them have some interesting work. But if so, as you will see, as we get a little bit closer, there will be an application process that is similar to GSOC, where you look at the project ideas page. You start, like I said, interacting with your mentor to create the proposal. Everything will be uploaded through like the GSOC page, and that will be the process that we follow. And we'll give a little bit more details on that as we get a little bit closer to those deadlines. Right? I wanted to give. Does anybody have questions about that? Is there anything that's unclear with regards to that process? I was actually wondering if people would be, it would be useful if maybe some of the mentors who are on the call also kind of, identify themselves. I see, well, Aaron just had to leave, so we unfortunately missed him, but there are 4 mentors that I see right now on the call. I may have missed somebody. So I have Colleen, Hojun, Jajit, and Jenshin all on the call right now. And if you could just unmute yourself, maybe introduce yourself and maybe talk like a quick minute about what projects you're thinking about for this. I'll start with Colleen. Is that okay?
Sure. Hi, I'm Colleen Josephson. I'm a new faculty member in the ECE department at Santa Cruz. My work is kind of in the middle of EE and CS. I work a lot on sensor systems and sensor networks with a focus on looking at how we can use them to improve sustainable practices. So a lot of my research actually in the past, most of it has been open sourced over the past few years. The project I have in mind is developing kind of an improved visualization platform for sensor networks. Right now, there's a bit of a challenge in that, kind of every sensor network, they have kind of a local, like if you look at Beagle Bones or Rocket Loggers, they're all kind of embedded networking platforms that work well with sensor networks, but there's nothing kind of designed to collect data from a large number of these and visualize that versus kind of local visualization. So this is a project that would be looking at collecting data from sensors that are deployed on the farm at Santa Cruz and doing nice things to explore that data and make visualizations easy to use and accessible. And I think this project would be pretty good for either open source beginners or intermediates. It's pretty accessible. And I think that the community would find a good amount of value in making this platform available for others to build off of their own sensor networks.
Great, thanks, Colleen. I want Colleen brought up a good point about the varying levels of ability that people can have and still we try and make sure it's obvious from the project ideas page that what skill level you are at. So we want to be able to, I really appreciate that she was talking about accessibility. We would love to have if you're new to this but you have a skill level to work on one of the newbie project, that's totally great. And we're really excited to have a wide range of different skill levels represented in our projects. And we'll try to make sure those are clear. As we're kind of refining our project ideas page, we're going to ask our mentors to kind of refine the difficulty levels to make sure it's clear, and also what skills specific to that are helpful to have. So thank you very much, Colleen. JG, did you want to talk a little bit about some of your projects and some of what you're working on? Oh, and JG, just to point out, JG is one of our mentors who was, because Colleen said she was on GSOC, she had been a contributor to GSOC. JG is also a mentor who also started out as a contributor on a student for one of our GSOC projects. Go ahead, JG.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Stephen. Yeah, so hi, my name is Jajit. So I mainly work in the area of, so I'm a first year PhD student, and I mainly work in the area of programmable storage systems and in the context of data management. So what we do is that we try to offload data management tasks into the storage system and get better performance doing that. So currently, so my project that I'm working on is called Skyhook, and currently we are trying to integrate Skyhook, the offload capability, into some popular data management frameworks like Delta Lake, Iceberg, if you've heard of it. And yeah, so if you're interested in working in the intersection of data management and programmable storage systems, and please check out the Skyhook projects that are given in the project ideas page. Yep, that's it.
Great, thanks, Judy. Hey, Jinshin?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jinshin. I'm a PhD student from UC Santa Cruz and under the supervision of Professor Carlos Martin. I am PhD student, but and my main thesis topic I'm currently working right now is the use of social storage devices, and which is about how to leverage those embedded devices and embedded systems to bring benefits bring benefits for those distributed workloads. Think about how to reduce the total cost of ownership and how to reduce the energy consumption, and also think about how to improve the performance by offloading some of the host tasks to those embedded devices. And if you look at the project list that we have on the website, we posted a couple of projects related to how to use the smart SSDs and how to use the smart NICs to make some of the tasks, for example, the error or patch tasks that trying to filter the data, and how to use the smart NIC to transmit data between different nodes by using the scatter gather capability of the smart NIC, things like that. We have a couple of projects to be related to this area, and so if anybody think about they are interested in any of these projects, please send email to me or send to the Stephanie and Carlos. I think that's it.
Great, thank you, Vincent. Hojun, you wanna lead it?
Hi, I'm Hojun Tang. I'm a computer research scientist from Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. And my research focuses on I/O and data management on high-performance computing systems. So we have developed a software-defined object-based data management system called Proactive Data Containers, or PDC. And this summer, I'm looking forward to working with a student to add new features to this system, such as adding a Python interface so that more scientists can use it and benefit from it.
Great. What other person who is not a mentor? And Hojun is actually one of our, we have a number of folks who were saying we traditionally have done UCSC faculty and researchers. Last year, first year we did other UCs, and Hojun is from Lawrence Berkeley Lab. So that's one of a number of non-UCSC different UC campuses that are represented in our mentor space. So another one, although not a mentor, and so I'm totally putting him on the spot, but maybe could talk a little bit about the Live HD, is actually our student from last year, one of our OSRE students from last year. Jesse, do you feel comfortable just going quickly over like a little bit of the Live HD project?
Oh yeah, sure, but I don't have that much expertise as a PhD student, so I'm the undergraduate. So yeah, so Live HD is a software suite for like a hardware design, synthesis, and simulation. So it's basically the software for like design the chips, like the CPU inside your phones and the other like embedded chips. Yeah, you know, the sort of the development board and it's that stuff. So yeah, our software like aims to like combine those commonly used tools into a single, like you can just run a command inside our shell, and so you don't have to like run multiple commands with like multiple tools, and that will be like faster and more precise. So yeah. And if you are interested in the project, you can contact our Professor Jose, and yeah.
Great, thanks, Jesse. So good. Sorry, I put you on the spot on that one. But Jesse was one of our great OSRE students last year, and very, very successful project. So we still have about 15 minutes left. I wanted to also point out, if you have a chance to go into on the projects page, yeah, there. My mouse isn't. You'll see a number of other projects that and not all the mentors were able to make this. Let's see, also sorry, I'm working on 2 different screens and not necessarily responding. You can look at some other projects. Feel free, if you have questions about them, jump up. For any ones we haven't talked about, Carlos and I could probably talk, to give a quick overview of any of them as well. I'm reading on the chat, it says, you're interested in OSABC. Yes, that one. So that's actually a great project to bring up. This is the open source autonomous vehicle controller. Aaron, who was the mentor for that project, had to leave early, unfortunately. Oops, I think I just had to leave early, unfortunately. But he did say before he took off, he sent me a message and said he was happy to set up a separate call with anyone that's interested in that project. I think your question was, is it carried out remotely? We actually had a great success last year. He had, I want to say 3 students, possibly 4. He had 3 students work with him last year, and they were all remote, and it worked out. I mean, it depends on the project, and that he tailored the project so that it would work from a remote perspective. Yeah, and what Carla said, they're all remote by default. So there are projects that maybe are easier to do if you're not quite so far away, like if there's some sort of equipment is something that needs to be, or items that need to be shared. But we were actually that was our first time doing that level of a hardware project through this GSOC or OSRE, and it actually worked out great. So definitely reach out to Aaron to ask him about that. If you see if any student sees a project where they have that question, reach out to the mentor in general, because the assumption is that it's a remote project, that everything will be done. You will stay in your home and do the work remotely. That there are methodologies for getting it to work remotely.
And because we're reaching out to students all over the world, right? And we have no process in place for immigration, for anything, right? You're staying. Yeah. If you are from outside the US, we have even for students who are inside the US but not live in Santa Cruz, we have no housing. We don't have any of that, right? It's basically assumed that if you're not in Santa Cruz, that you work remotely. And even if you are in Santa Cruz, right, who knows what the pandemic brings, right? There's most of the research is still being done remotely, even in the hardware context. I'm sure Colleen can also talk a little bit about that, but there are lots of remotely controlled facilities, right, where you can do a lot of work. So you don't have to be, everybody's working very hard to make this possible so that people can work remotely.
I also, I mentioned that we had our students do lightning talks last year at our symposium. For those of you who are interested, that might be a really great way to get an idea of some of the work that was done last year. I'll pop the link in there, and you can actually check all the videos. So most of them are, I think the ones who worked with Aaron actually are in his session. If I'm correct. Yeah, they're actually in the OSAVC workshop. So you can see I think they have a little bit longer description so that they'll specifically touch on that, what you were just asking about with regards to how they manage that type of project remotely. But then all the other ones also are on from all the other mentors for the people who work with all the other mentors are also have their lightning talks up. So it may just give you an idea of the type of projects that were done last year and give you some inspiration as well. Let me see if what I think I missed some questions. So if we're new to open source contributors.
Yeah, I can answer that question. So so thank you for that question. It's actually a very common question, right? And so the way I would answer that is that's one way to go about it, right? To look for easy projects. But another way is to look for projects that really interest you, no matter whether they are labeled difficult or easy, right? Because one thing that you should look at these projects as a way of a starting point for your application. So these are not necessarily the projects that you're going to do, but it's going to be a negotiation process between the mentor and you, and what actually you would like to work on. And so if for instance you really like one project, but it's like labeled difficult, but you have a good idea, or you have some kind of insight, or you like there's one aspect that you really like to get involved in, talk with the mentor, see whether there is maybe an easier project that is more aligned with your skill set, and whether that might be a possibility to work on. So I wouldn't just write off all the difficult projects just because you're a beginner. It's really important to look for something that interests you, and then talk with the mentor, right? Start a chat or something that so you can actually maybe find out whether there are actually opportunities that you think you could do. Maybe other mentors can chime in if they're.
Actually, a good question was, did I miss any mentors? I didn't see anybody else on the list, but is there anybody whose maybe name I'm not recognizing because it's truncated in some way? I think I got everybody. All right. Any other just logistical questions about the application process? Seeing if there's I do want to point out a couple of the other projects where the mentors weren't able to come as well before we close off. But I'm not seeing any other questions. So we do have a couple. We have a couple ones. These are actually from folks in other UCs that I want to highlight as well. We have the Open Road project, so a complete autonomous RTL GDSII, I think there's a GDS2 flow for VLSI designs. So again, something that has a nice kind of hardware feel to it. We also have the Apache Asterisk DB, which and has some geospatial data science on Asterisk DB. Let me see, there's the Fast Tensor, which I'm not too much, and then another one is the Polyform Polyphi, which I know Carlos knows a bit about, so maybe you can just give a quick overview of OSRE's project.
But that's in UC Santa Cruz.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have currently projects from UC Riverside, UC San Diego, and UC Santa Cruz, and then also from Lawrence Berkeley Labs. So those are the 4 organizations that we currently cover. But there are going to be more projects being added throughout this month. And so look for other projects. And if you also know someone within the UC system or at national labs, and you wondering why they're not on that list, and they know, that they are doing, that they have an open source project that they usually like to find people to work on, let us know, right? Or contact them and share this effort with them. We're trying to advertise as much as possible, but we're just doing this for the first time across multiple campuses, right? And so this is something that, we hope that the news spreads and help us doing that. If you are, if you have already connections with the UC system. Yeah, and other than that, also let us know, send us email to crossinfo if you have any comments about, what seems to be difficult, or what would you like to, any feedback to the program, how we can help you getting involved. This is all very valuable to us, right? And thank you for your interest. This is great. So.
Great. Yeah, thanks a lot. We'll be updating the website pretty continuously, both the project ideas page and the main one on the CROSS website. So just keep checking back. The application deadline won't change. That one's set, but there may be some adjustments on procedures or the like that may impact. But you can, and if you ever are concerned, you can't find some information, you can always email me, or like Carla said, the general CROSS website also is, you can get a hold of either of us that way. And you can always ask your mentor too. If you are working with a mentor and you have a question, typically we're trying to keep the mentors updated as well on all of these changes, so they should hopefully always have the most updated information as well. All right. Well, great. If there aren't any other questions, we can wrap it up a little early, 2 minutes early, give people a break, and especially those of you calling from joining from India probably appreciate that it's pretty late over there. Again, I'm really looking forward to seeing the projects all of y'all come up with, and we're really excited about this summer program and working with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks. Bye, everybody.